Good morning, everybody. I'm Charlie Fink here with Ted Chilowitz. It's This Week in XR. It's April 22nd, 2022. And the show, as it is every week, brought to you by Verbella. Good morning, Ted.
Morning, Charlie. I'm heading off to NAB tomorrow for the first really big kind of super trade show back. We'll see how it
I'm having
does.
FOMO because everyone is going except me.
We'll see. I'll keep you posted. It'll be interesting.
So let's get right to the. Oh, we have a great guest this morning.
Yeah, our friend Nonny.
Pena.
Yeah,
the godmother of VR.
Nonny is a very good friend and known her since the inception of all this crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean, Nonny she's a treasure. She's won every award you could possibly win as a content creator, except for an Oscar, but perhaps that will change soon.
Yeah, hopefully coming soon. Yeah.
And she's an educator and a good friend. So look forward to catching up with her. She's got some news to tell us about. Let's start with the big story this week. $33 million for a free design app on the Quest.
Yeah, the Gravity Sketch app, which is yet another provability point about this combination of, I'd say, call enterprise and consumer, right? Anybody can download it. It's free to use, but there's certain enterprise benefits for people creating and building and using it as a real viable tool. And so they raised some serious capital to keep moving that forward.
They raised $7 million in 2020, which was not nothing.
Right.
But a lot of people are using it. My niece is a industrial designer, and she would not leave home without it.
Interesting. And now they raised another 30-something million. Right?
Yeah, 33 million.
So keep the thing moving. Yeah, that's great.
Good story. Good for them. Here's another good one, Ted. The NFL.
I know, this is one I've been tracking.
To the Meta Quest in the fall.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've been tracking this because I am, like a lot of people, a legit NFL fan.
Yeah.
And truthfully, you know, one of my favorite experiences on the original Tethered Rift was the VR Sports app, which had a great football simulation where you got really good throwing and catching, and it was a very enjoyable app that I played a lot when we were back in the Tethered days, you know, and I still fire it up occasionally. So I'm excited to see there's been a few football apps that have been done, haven't really fired on all cylinders. So I'm hoping that this one really gets it right. So we'll see.
Supposedly it's using real-time NFL game data to construct the simulation. And so it's a first-person game. You're standing under the center.
Yeah.
And you take the snap and you really get a sense of how terrifyingly fast the game is.
Right. So,
you only have a few seconds before they sack you.
I mean, look, they've got a high bar to meet with Madden, right? Because Madden has been a stalwart of the gaming world forever, and it increases in its fidelity and gameplay and experience of how real it feels. So now VR is taking their shot at it, and we'll see how they do.
I got to tell you, it's kind of a personal aside, but one of my sons, neither of them really love VR as much as I do. But one of them likes it well enough. But his point is the games that I really like are on consoles. So until VR has those games, like when VR has Madden, then I'll be playing VR. When I can be the quarterback, he literally said this to me last year. When I can be the quarterback, I will do more VR. So I hope the game is great. You know,
fire up your old Rift again and put him in VR Sports, because he can really be the quarterback. It's a really, really good experience that was kind of undercovered, maybe just because it was so early, but it's exceptionally good physics.
I think this sort of thing is exactly what VR needs. So hopefully the quality of it will be high enough so that it'll bring more people into it, because we need these kinds of apps to hook people.
Did he play your son? Did he play Resident Evil when it ported over to the VR?
I don't know. I'll have to ask him about that.
That would be
I don't know how much VR he's
in,
doing these days.
Very much a console thing that moved over.
His game, and actually this is a good segue into our next story. His game is Golf Plus, but there's another great golf game on the Quest called Walkabout Mini Golf.
Yes, which I do too. It's very fun.
Yeah, we haven't done this together.
No, you and I haven't done it, but I've done it with other folks.
They have a lot of courses. They're fun courses. They're well designed, but not impossible. They make you think just enough. And now they're evolving it into much more of a social experience. So, now you kind of hang out in front of like the golf hut that they have at mini golf courses, where you kind of wait for somebody to join your match.
Pair up with somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, but now they're creating a whole club where you hang out and they have putting and driving and I guess a raft ride of all things. So
Yeah.
they're trying to keep people in the world and provide other social things for them to do. I actually tweeted at these guys earlier this week. I think they ought to get together with 4VR. That's another company that's doing bowling and darts and
Right.
pool, and they're trying to do all those kind of indoor games. But it seems they seem natural bedfellows, like to be
that's
like
interesting.
one metaverse exactly with pro putt in it and top golf and everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Meta does a bundle of those types of things and does a bit of a forcing agent to put them together. But it would be interesting if you could swap avatars.
They're all exactly where I was going. They're all using the Meta avatar system.
Right.
So all they have to do is just kind of, erase the wall, if you will.
Right. And say, hey, you want to go play some darts after we finish our mini golf game, and then you start to really build into this world. That's really
right, because I think these social places, and I think that's the challenge for Horizon and others, is you have to have things to do in VR.
Right.
So, this is a place where you could keep yourself really busy. So congrats to Walkabout, really interesting company. Okay, here's one. Yeah, I should have jumped on this one right away because I
led with this one.
The one about Horizon Worlds going to the web.
Yeah.
Which I hadn't given it any thought really, but they have to, right?
It's a natural evolution of what they need to do to find scale and find, where people are. You've got to meet people where they are. Not everybody is like us that's trying to be in VR more than they're on regular platforms. Most people are on regular.
All of their competitors have some kind of PC companion. And by the way, Rec Room, oh my God, when they started adding things like PCs and mobile phones and game consoles, they just scaled out of sight.
Yeah. It's a continued provability that there is audiences and markets out there, really more for traditional platforms, for web and mobile, right? And VR is still a sector of that that's of course growing all the time, but you cannot live in VR alone, right? That's what the provability is.
So I don't know if you keep your eye on Coachella, but they've been adding the fest. I guess this is the last weekend of the festival. They do it over several weekends, but they've added AR to several acts, including somebody named Flume. I guess this is a very famous act, and Flume during their live stream of Coachella, which is live streamed along with the giant 400,000 person live event. They also stream it live. And apparently the Flume act, I put up the link on the Forbes column, is completely filled with AR and effects and flying dragons and the whole 9 yards. I mean, really
overlay experience.
Yeah. It just goes to it's the thing we have been talking about live music, and live performances starting to people have their phone in their hand already.
Right. Yeah, right. And they want to be
so it's a secondary way of doing it live.
Right. I mean, you go to any concert and half of the concert patrons are filming their phone's version to the thousands of people in an audience. I don't exactly know what they're doing with it. It's sort of like a personal memory or something, or they're going to share it, but they're just capturing the same thing that all their friends are capturing, holding their phone up. Oddly enough, sort of putting a barrier between them and the experience. But if you're going to do it and then make it something fun and interesting, where
aren't half the people at a concert, my experience is half the people there are filming it or streaming it themselves. So that's they want to have that secondary screen experience.
Yeah, these days it is, right? So you might as well lean into it. Yeah.
Snap also continues to do more and more things with location-based AR. So it's really it's a version of that, right? It's AR that works at a particular moment for a particular reason. They have been touting recently, although they've done a lot of interesting things recently, but they're working with the LA County Museum of Art and selected artists to augment monuments around LA.
Right, which is an interesting use case. I mean, I think there's always been a fascination for me personally, I think to you as well, about how we start to march our way into the wearables, right? And the idea of these geolocated experiences where, yes, we're using our little magic window version today, but we can start to extrapolate to a day when we have these outdoor capable devices that you'll put on in various hotspots. And
exactly,
that experience will start to really become something. And a lot of artists are doing it.
One of the things we need is notifications, right? I mean, I need to know if when
it's ready.
Yeah, hey, my phone buzzed and I open it and it says, hey, you're outside this historic building that has been, decorated by this artist, or, has some kind of AR content that you may want to pay attention to. Yeah. And I think that's always been kind of the problem, right? That if you have the glasses on, it's easy for it to flash or notify you in a less innocuous way. But I think that this is really going to help AR scale and keep it more front of mind for people.
Yeah, just it's another step in the equation, which is good. Yeah.
So while we're waiting for Nonny de la Pena to come in, let me share with you all her incredible background. She's called the godmother of VR because she's been making VR experiences for 20 years, right? She had to make her own headsets. And maybe we'll get her. Oh, she's here. She had to make her own headsets. That's how long she's been doing this.
Yeah, well,
so we'll get it straight from Nonny. Here we go.
Well, as she connects in, she was in the early stages of the cardboard Palmer Luckey pre-Oculus stuff. She was
right, because she was at USC, and I think he was working with Bolus and then Skip Rizzo.
Yes. So she can tell us that story first.
Yeah.
Good morning, all. I somehow broke my wrist, so I tripped, and so I am extremely casted at the moment, which makes everything considerably harder. So I'm gonna say good morning to y'all, but forgive me if I stumble a little bit because the pain sometimes keeps me up from sleeping as well as I would like.
So we're here for you.
Thank you. Thanks, man. It's great to see my dear friend Ted. And Charlie has also really made his way into my heart as one of my dear friends. So I really appreciate you both inviting me in this morning to chat with you.
Absolutely. We're thrilled to have you. You, as Charlie was professing before you joined, your deep connection to this world of virtual reality that sort of far surpasses most of us in terms of how far back you go with it and how connected you are into it and how your journey is an interesting journey in and of itself.
Yeah, it's been kind of crazy, right? It really starts for me back. I can't remember what I did first, whether I saw an installation at USC called Frictions or Imaginary Frictions or read Howard Rheingold's book on virtual reality. But one of those two things back in the 90s, literally, I'd been working so hard as a journalist to try to put people on scene and make them really connect to the story through text, through documentary. And I really was inspired by this idea that you could be there, right? That you could actually be present in these spaces. But at that point, I didn't know really how to code. I taught myself some HTML. Having gone from Venice High School to Harvard when I was 17, and I'd never been in the East Coast of my life when I showed up at Harvard, showed up with no coat, no boots, and even though we had this basic programming course that you had to pass freshman year, and I was really good at it, and I was helping everybody else, I didn't continue in the programming courses because everybody kept saying how hard they were. And of course, you can imagine I was not, there were plenty of days at Venice High that rather than being in class, I was actually at the beach. So, I was a little bit underprepared for some of the coursework requirements, although I caught up. I really did catch up by my senior year. So cut to this time in the 90s when I, taught myself HTML and was really keen on VR, but didn't really know what to do with it. And then I heard about this grant. My husband had dragged me up to Ithaca, New York, because he was teaching in the science studies program there at Cornell for a couple of years. And I was, super isolated, as you can imagine, and found this amazing grant that the Bay Area Video Coalition and the MacArthur Foundation had put together to take real history, kind of important documentary stories, and bring them into the digital realm. And that's how everything started, because I applied to do the virtual Guantanamo Bay with digital artist Peggy Weil, got the grant, and that kind of kicked it all off in Second Life.
And I think maybe that's the first time you and I started to intersect, was at Sundance, I don't know how many years ago, when I was starting to see you were still using custom headsets that you were building and sort of jerry rigging yourself because you needed tracking and you needed things that the headsets that weren't your own didn't have yet. And you were starting to demonstrate these police action stories and these very emotional stories that people would queue up to see as like essentially little micro theme park attractions, but with very, very serious subject matter. And that became really your sort of stock and trade for quite some time, right? You were kind of living in those festivals and proving out how you could tell stories this way and move people's emotions and make them take action, right?
Yeah, so that first piece was 2007. It was a virtual Guantanamo Bay prison, right? Because Gitmo was off limits, most citizens and press, and we had this incredible, I look at it now when we talk about the metaverse, we had so many students from around the globe having tours through the space. We had a lot of real video and audio. And after that piece was made, Ted, that's when I kind of went like, oh, this could be used for all kinds of journalism. And that's when I coined the idea of immersive journalism, which led to that piece at Sundance. That piece at Sundance was the Hunger in Los Angeles project, where during the downturn, so many people were going hungry, and they were invisible. And I wanted to make them more visible. And I chose a kind of unusual medium to try to do that. When I look back on it, I had to try to do some more coding and beg and borrow a lot of favors. And at that moment, when it got into Sundance, I was working out of Mark Bolas's lab at USC. We had the $50,000 headset, the Wide 5, and Mark was like, "You're not taking that to Sundance." We're like, "Oh shit!" And Palmer was there, and also it was kind of an extraordinary gathering of people. There was John Brennan, who, now has built like the virtual cameras for Ready Player One and Lion King 1, and now it's on Lion King 2, and also Bradley Newman, another incredibly talented thinker and programmer, and Tai Fan, who's now at Microsoft, who really was instrumental in writing a lot of the code that drove the headset. And then, of course, Palmer Luckey.
Right.
So Palmer Luckey was like the lab intern. And when Mark said, "You can't take a headset," Palmer got to it. And to his credit, he produced something that worked. And that's where we started.
Yeah, it's interesting that like that period of time, that little coalition of these really interesting people that are all pursuing very interesting paths still to this day, right? Some expected, some not so expected, and some sort of flourished and got huge sort of investment dynamics, and others sort of live inside the worlds of production techniques and stuff. But it's sort of fascinating that you were part of that little beehive collective that became such an important part of moving the medium forward to where it is today, and still does, right? I mean, a lot of these people, as you mentioned, are still pushing the envelope. You may not hear about them a lot, they may not be front and center, but they are the driving force, like you, which is interesting, which kind of leads us to flash forward into what you're doing now, educating others in all that you've learned and all that you bring to the table, right? So that's kind of where your current gig is helping others achieve what you achieved in different ways. Would I be stating that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. And one little interesting side note was that Tai Fan, who was finishing up his master's in computer science at the time, had gone through the virtual Gitmo in Second Life and said, "Hey, if this is what they're doing at USC, I want to go to school there," and applied to USC because of that project. And then we ended up working together completely. It felt completely, he didn't approach me. We just happened to be in the same space a couple of years later. So, this education space that he was in, that we were in, that allowed all that creativity to flourish and bloom. I'm hoping that we're able to now take that really extraordinary ecosystem that got built in that small space that we had, and bring it to a scale, and particularly to scale it among diverse creators, thinkers, artists. We know that this technology fields can still be pretty limited in their inclusivity. And the point of this master's is super low cost. And we've set it up at Arizona State University, but in downtown Los Angeles, in an amazing new building. I'm sure Charlie can talk about that because he toured it. And it allows me to provide, best in class, excellent instructors, gear.
Let me interrupt you.
Sorry. Yeah,
let me interrupt you and set this up a little bit, because we jumped right into this, and I'm not sure people at home fully, or our listeners fully understand what we've pivoted to here. But last year, Nonny was approached by Arizona State University, which is a very fast-growing institution that is spreading its tentacles throughout the web, and also into neighboring states like Southern California. And they approached Nonny about creating a new program that is a joint venture between their journalism school and their film school, which has been working in extended reality. And they have created a sort of center for emerging narrative, and it's a 12-month program, heavily subsidized, that is going to be run out of the old Hearst building in downtown LA, which the university has renovated and filled with amazing spaces, and, as Nonny was saying, facilities and equipment to give young storytellers the opportunity to get started in immersive media, working with, in this case, the pioneer of the medium of storytelling using VR. So, Nonny, please go on and correct any parts that might have been inaccurate.
No, it's a really interesting building, just even from its history, because it was designed and built by the first female architect ever given her license to operate in the United States.
Wow.
She built San Simeon too.
That's right. And it was also, the Herald Examiner building. So it was a newspaper building. So how amazing that this old technology, this extraordinary female pioneer for this old technology, that I am giving an opportunity to introduce new forms of journalism as a female pioneer in this new form of journalism. So you go in there and the energy is just so right. I see Charlie's nodding his head here, because it just is this really, you just feel that that we're going to be doing some amazing things there, and I'm just so excited to see what kind of things the students produce. I've been saying yes to being on a lot more juries lately. It's given me some opportunity to do that, to really think about other people's work, and even more than before. And I have to say, I'm really excited about what the future holds.
That's great. And is it on the web? Can people find out about the program and potentially apply on the web? Do they go to the ASU website, or where would you go?
That's exactly right. It's ASU, and then if you look at narrative and emerging media is the new program, and I should have the website up, but it's within the Sidney Poitier School, and
narrative and emerging media. Here it is.
Yep, got it.
Film.asu.edu.
Thank you.
And here's a good one, and right next to it is the title of the story: Godmother of Virtual Reality joins ASU to build new LA-based program, center. So that's pretty cool. Who called you the godmother of virtual reality? That's a great title. I want one like that.
Every once in a while I'm like, oh, the grandmother. But anyway, so I even have one.
It's a godmother, not the grandmother.
I know, but I had this one French journalist, right? And she's the queen of virtual reality, and my assistant's like, let me correct that to godmother. I'm like, no. Let's just leave queen. But honestly, it comes from I do get embarrassed by it. It's funny, but it comes from the fact that I was at Sundance with, I think it might have been Project Syria. I did multiple pieces there, and a number of people kept passing through my space while this Engadget reporter was talking to me, who were saying, "Oh, Nonny introduced me to VR. Oh, Nonny, showed me VR for the first time and worked with me on my project. Oh, Nonny helps inspire my." Literally, I had like 4 or 5 people, and of course, and there was the origin story of the headset. And Engadget reporter turned to me and went like, "You're like the godmother of VR." And then he published that, and then everybody picked it up. And that's where it really started. Like I said, sometimes I feel like, there's so many people who work in this field and so many people who've come before me, and how things are. I do accept that I was a pioneer. I mean, when Palmer turned to making the Oculus Rift, the first headsets, they really sucked, right? You just sat down at a computer and I couldn't stand them. And so I had to make my own. And I had to source the lenses from a bankruptcy sale and find, screens out of China. And we set up a 3D printer in my mom's garage, and I was making my own headsets. And we actually got some HDMI transmitters that let us be wireless. So I think we were one of the first wireless headsets out there. But then the Vive came out, and that was much more simple situation than trying to, there's stories of me like landing in Syracuse and having to fix the headsets with a friggin' paperclip. I mean, they weren't the most stable things that I can tell you, but they work great. I mean, they look great. They felt great when they were on your head, that you really felt in the scenes, even with that digital reproduction that we had to do. Obviously photogrammetry now is getting amazing, but you felt these stories. It's been an effective medium.
Yeah, it's interesting, Nonny, that you lived truly through the dynamic of what we call and refer to as the innovator's dilemma, right? Which is this famous book written by Clayton Christensen, who's a Harvard professor, who defined this idea of how innovation happens, where you end up getting something that is lesser in so many ways when it starts, but it starts to prove the point that when we get all the pieces and parts right, it will exceed all its expectations. And those of us that have lived through an innovator's dilemma moment, and I've personally had to do it a number of times with products that I was involved in very early on, like you get this real sort of there's a love and an amazing trepidation about all the steps it takes to move something into mainstream understanding and mainstream use case, right? And you've lived it in such an intimate way. I think that's, you and I share this commonality about that, of like the earliest days of things. Where you start to see the promise of something, but you just know it's going to take so many bumps in the road to get there. And you're one of the ones that have lived through it probably more intimately than almost anybody that I know.
Yeah, and as I sang into the microphone at the South by Southwest Hall of Fame induction, I'm not dead yet. So for those of you who play Pistol Whip, you maybe will recognize where that line comes from. Whenever that comes on, I shout it so loud. It's actually a Dvorak song. But when you're playing in Pistol Whip, man, it feels great to shout that as loud as you can. So, I'm a fan too of this medium. I'm a big, big fan. It's so fun. It's still going to have some growing pains. There's no doubt. I know that sometimes AR seems more frictionless, but storytelling in VR, it's just so powerful. When you look at like From the Morning That You Wake that just came out, I mean, oh my God, what a beautiful, beautiful piece of work. So we're just getting started in this space. And I've also had, you talk about the difficulties of going through this. It's also been a real privilege, right? People have really believed in me and given me opportunities to lead them as teams, make these incredible, tell people stories. Last year I worked with the Japanese American National Museum on a really, ended up being a very powerful piece about a young man, a brilliant artist and writer, who ended up dying in World War II and had been incarcerated in a Japanese American camp in Heart Mountain, Wyoming. Been working for a couple of years now on a major piece on Lyme disease that's coming out soon. And, people have let me tell their stories, and that's always a privilege. I think as journalists, we always know that. But I feel like in this medium, even more so, because it's so, it's a risk still, right? When you work in a new medium.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be able to continue to do your own work while running this new program? It sounds like that's sort of a 20-hour-a-day job to begin with.
Yeah, I'm kind of a 48-hour-a-day type of person. So I usually run pretty fast. I mean, my cast right now, I'll be off in like a week. Oh God. Anyway, but after that, I hope we'll get back up to my normal speed, but or pretty soon after. But yeah, Charlie, I think that they really want to make sure that I continue with my practice so that I can continue to try to, stay abreast and innovate. I'm currently working on a piece right now alongside some very interesting folks like, the brilliant Alton Glass and Retha Hill, who's another amazing thinker, creator, and just starting to develop a relationship with Carla Lindale Bishop on a project on the 1906 race massacre in Atlanta with the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. Everybody, a lot of people know now about Tulsa and what happened in Tulsa in 1916, but this happened all over America. So working on that piece, and that piece is really coming along.
Wow, that sounds amazing, actually.
So that's still happening. And I'm also still working on our, very bootstrapped beta platform. We should have another, a proper beta out in the next couple of months on reach.love, which is our,
Right, your web-based VR content tool.
Yeah, button-based, right? It's a simple tool, but I know what it takes to code in Unity or even Blueprint and Unreal. It's a heavy lift.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of very simple stories people want to tell, and we're still working on making the tool simple to use and easy to share, and trying to push into a no-code solution for folks.
Nonny, are you at a stage with your students yet where you're starting to see output, or is it too early? Like, are you starting to see remarkable new things that are unexpected even by you that students are starting to create, or is it still too early for that in the evolution of what you're doing with the class?
Yeah. Our first class, we've just finishing up all the requirements to get approval. And our first class will be this fall. And in fact, we can't open up our application process until June.
Gotcha.
So, but next year, obviously, it'll be a much more normal timeline for applications. But I really encourage people to think about coming this fall because we're cooking up some good scholarships. So even though it'll be late in the day, we might have some really good support. So this might be the year to really take advantage of that and think about applying.
So we'll have you back on when you've got the first crop of things that you say, these are remarkable. Like, I can't even imagine that this happened now. That's great.
That would be really fun. I would thoroughly enjoy that.
Nonny, thank you for joining us this morning. It's been great to catch up with you. Like most of our friends who comes on the show, obviously this is the beginning of what should be a 3-hour dinner.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. I really appreciate it. And I, obviously it's a pleasure to get to spend some time with both of you. And I hope we do turn this into a dinner.
All right, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye now. Bye.
All right, that's our show this week. See you soon.